joining us now to discuss this is Republican Congressman from North Carolina, Dan Bishop. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate that. I've got to ask you about the PPI that just came out, the wholesale price rise. Breaking news again. This just happened moments ago. It has risen a whole percentage point here to 9.7%. We're seeing now. You tack this with inflation. Your thoughts on what we're seeing and really how much more Americans are paying here in our country?
Well, Sean, they kept telling us that inflation was going to be fairly modest and transitory, and every month seems to bring another horrific headline on that score. Americans feel it in everything they do. That you're speaking of a producer price index, highest ever rate of increase, but that immediately translates into harm for American citizens. So it's just an example. We've had terrible fiscal policy. We've all said it. The big advocates of modern monetary theory say we can spend without limit and not worry about our debt. That's not turning out to be the case.
No, absolutely not. Again, we'll continue to follow that. The Fed will react as well. I imagine this will be a talker at the White House press briefing as well if that happens. There's a lot going on in the news, and that's not just it. I want to talk to you about D.C. dropping their mandates there. D.C. is one of the areas that you had to show proof of vaccination to attend a show or go and get yourself a burger at one of the restaurants there. Suddenly dropping that and dropping the indoor mask mandate. Are you seeing the tides turn on this through our nation, and what would be the reason for it?
Sean, I think the tide is turning. Liberal politicians are rushing for the exit now because Americans have had their fill of this. But, consider the mask mandate that Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., imposed. It went into effect January 15. It's now being ended February 15. About the only impact of that, Sean, was to desolate the few remaining restaurants surviving in D.C. One, the Big Board in particular, serves burgers. They shut them down, they jerked their liquor license and so forth because they didn't immediately enforce the mask mandate to the liking of the bureaucrats. Just a reeking destruction all across the nation. But meanwhile, the celebrities are on full display at the Super Bowl without masks. The only people, it seems to me, are going to remain in masks as we're looking at it right now are the school children, which are the least jeopardized by COVID, always have been, and probably the people most harmed. It has been irrational from beginning to end.
Yeah, and just to point out the Super Bowl, I think at SoFi Stadium there in L.A., where there was a mask mandate for indoor capacities and crowds larger than 5,000. No one adhered to that there inside of that stadium at all. I think that for millions of Americans, tens of millions, by the way, that watched the Super Bowl, that could have been a wake-up call as well. All right, I want to ask you about this, too, the Durham probe. The new report here finding that the Clinton campaign allegedly paid to infiltrate Trump servers, this while he was a candidate and even president. Again, according to the Durham probe there in a report filing. Of course, the White House was asked about this. Principal Deputy Secretary, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre kind of dodged the question. Here's that.
That's something I can't speak to from this podium, so I refer you to the Department of Justice.
Is what was described in that report monitoring internet traffic? Is that spying?
Again, I can't speak to that report. I refer you to the Department of Justice.
Congressman, obviously there's still a lot of questions, and there's still more that has to come out with this probe. But bottom line is, will anyone ever answer questions about this from this White House or the DOJ, State Department, et cetera?
Sean, I'm encouraged that finally we're getting to the heart of very interesting stuff. This Rodney Jaffe, tech executive, worked for a company that had access to, in the words of Durham's recent filing in court, a sensitive arrangement giving them access to the internet traffic coming into and out of the White House. And they exploited that for political reasons. This is after President Trump was elected. Everything the president said about being spied on, his intuition was exactly right. This is the worst scandal in political scandal in American history. It makes Watergate look like nothing. And, to your question about whether people will see consequences, that depends on Durham in the first instance. Let's see what he comes up with. But I can tell you this, I'm going to be on the Judiciary Committee as Republicans take control next year, we hope and expect, and we are going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to send the subpoenas. We're going to find out the full extent of what has happened.
Really quickly, before you go, ABC News, NBC News, CBS News has not reported on this story. Why?
Because all of their reputations are inextricably bound up with this disaster, this Russian hoax that they all perpetuated and they got Pulitzers for. Accountability is coming for them as well.
Leave it right there. Congressman Dan Bishop joining us live there. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.